Hello. So, a while ago I made a video called The Black Fence Cat's Table of Tongues, and this is a follow-up video to that. Think of it as part 2. Anyway, in that video I mentioned I was trying to answer a question which was, how do I retain oral influence that is not colloquial? So, in other words, how do I remember languages that are not within proximity, that are not within my proximity to constantly remind me of the language, so that I never, lose it from my mind, so to speak. And so in the last video, I showed my table of tongues. I came up with an idea to help me further understand how I could learn every language in the world, right? Learn every language, and at least that humans speak, and then retain that information. I came up with an idea, and it's called extrapolation to origin to branch understanding of language. And so, basically, there's in a lot of words, there is what I like to refer to as the surface of the word, and then there's another part in the word that I like to refer to as the submerged part of the word, or foundation. So I'll give you an example. Absolution. Take the word absolution, and the surface is ab, and what is submerged, or the foundation, is solution. So that equals absolute solution, and it makes sense, right? You think about like the word forgiveness, and that is what is constantly perpetuated throughout society. That you should, have an ideal to forgive somebody. But nobody ever speaks about to absolve somebody with the same kind of popularity, right? Emphasized, right? It's not very popular to say absolve somebody as opposed to say forgive somebody. It's very popular to say forgive somebody. So, absolving somebody, that is, there's a logical reason why society doesn't perpetuate the term absolution as much as it perpetuates the term forgiveness. And the reason is because absolution is absolute solution, and people logically reason to themselves that that's not possible, that that's unattainable. But so absolution is absolute solution. It's overcoming a problem in its entirety. But anyway, that is beside the point of this video, which is extrapolation to origin to branch understanding of language. So, got some surface examples. So you already know about ab. Con, com, cor, di, dis, ix, fan, luna, mor, miss, ni, op, per, pre, re, sus, trans. And so we can say that re, as a surface part of a word, that would have something to do with reception, and which would have something to do with review of sorts, which would have something to do with retrospect, and really, so past tense. tense. And per, we can reason, commonly it would have something to do with perception, which would have to do with present tense. And so, like, you can go through these surface parts of words, and you can derive some loosely associated definitions, pulling from a colloquial understanding of the majority of words that begin with that surface in your own language. But the extrapolation part, the extrapolation to origin part, well, you know how when you're doing detective kind of work, if you're trying to find somebody, trying to locate like a missing person, or a fugitive, let's say, and you don't know where they are. Well, if they have a credit card, and they use it, and let's say there's business A over here, business B here, business C here, and business D here. Well, what you would do to find the fugitive, to zone in on that person, well, let's say they bought with the credit card from all these 4 businesses I mentioned, A, B, C, and D. And so they purchased from A, B, C, and D. Well, what you would do is you would reason, well, they're a fugitive. They're not going to risk, driving around in a car, that they're not gonna risk, using a cabbie. Like you strip away the false, not so much false, but you strip away the unrealistic explanations for how this fugitive, let's say, can shop from all 4 of these businesses. You strip away the unrealistic explanations, and you deal with the most realistic explanations. So that, what ends up happening is, okay, you assume this fugitive must be walking to all 4 of these locations. So they have to sleep somewhere. They have to have a place to stay if they're doing this over a period of time. So they are localized somewhere in this area that is, in the midst of these 4 places and within walking distance. And so the more unrealistic explanation you strip away, you zone in more and you localize around the person until you've got their actual, location. So what I've been thinking of with trying to learn every language and trying to brand it into the brain, so to speak, I've been thinking about doing this with words. So now I get it, words aren't people, right? A word isn't a fugitive, but the words have a surface part and they have a submerged part to them. Most words do. And you can pull from a lot of languages. Okay, so I've got a Latin dictionary here. I've got a Japanese dictionary here. I've got, the Oxford Spanish dictionary here. I'm going to get more dictionaries to help me out. But basically, you get a bunch of dictionaries. This is my idea. You get a bunch of dictionaries, then you read them, and you look for the surface words and the submerged words, so the surface parts and the submerged parts of the words. And then what you do is you extrapolate toward origin of meaning of those words, partial origin of meaning. And then once you've got the origin of the meaning, that's what you focus on remembering, as opposed to the specific words of the language, because those specific words of whatever language it is, they will present themselves in your mind once you understand the origin. That way you will understand every language, to begin with, right? You understand every language. You would have a very broad understanding of language, so that you can understand what someone speaking a foreign language is saying to you, even though they're speaking a foreign language. That's the point. The point is not necessarily that you will be able to speak every language fluently, and have all that linguistic knowledge in your head, of how to correctly pronounce the words and use right inflections and the tone of speaking voice and all that. The point is, rather than that, you would be able to understand, you would have such a broad understanding of the origin of language that you would be able to understand every language hypothetically, right? Theoretically. And so you basically take the surface part, the submerged parts too, and then you extrapolate from, the same, the similarities of across multiple languages, right? So that's why you need your dictionaries. And then what happens is you extrapolate till you strip away all the unrealistic explanation, and then you get to an origin. You've zoned in on an origin of the languages that is pretty concrete for this endeavor, right? And then what you do from that point is that you branch understanding. So that's how you'll be able to understand a foreign language without necessarily being able to speak it. But being able to speak it comes afterward. That will require some practice of actually, vocalizing the foreign languages. But the understanding of foreign languages, to understand a foreign language, you don't necessarily have to be able to speak it. You just have to be able to understand the components of the language, so to speak. And so, yeah, this was the idea I had, and idea I have, and hopefully it will help get me to where I want to be, which is to be able to understand every language and speak every language, and not have that information be lost to me. In fact, not have it be influence, and to sort of like turn it into information, because language is fashion, for my current perception, with my current awareness of it. It is fashion right now, and it is for most people in the world, if not all people currently. But to answer my question, how do I retain oral influence that is not colloquial? I may not have to retain oral influence. I may be able to retain oral information. And then, with that oral information, I will be able to understand, you know, every language, theoretically speaking. Anyway, that's, and it doesn't need to be colloquial, is the point. Because once you make it form instead of fashion, once you make it crystallized instead of fluid, right, you know, then it's there, it's integrated. The languages are integrated because the origin of the languages, with the ability to branch out, to interpret, that becomes integrated. And so this is the whole point of this video. Extrapolation to origin to branch understanding of language. And then, you know, this plus my table of tongues. So, you know, I explained before how, in the other video, how I mark this table. So you can watch that if you didn't see it already. But with the extrapolation idea, and with the filling up of the table, I think I can pretty much say that I'm well on my way to understanding how to keep that knowledge in my head permanently, that linguistic knowledge. And so I think I've already answered the question with this theory of extrapolation, the question of how do I retain oral influence that is not colloquial. I think I've answered it by, you know, changing it from oral influence. That's how you retain it. You make it oral information. You make it oral information, then it doesn't need to be colloquial because it's information, meaning inform. Anyway, yeah. Extrapolation to origin to branch understanding of language. Something to think about. Have a good day. Peace. Meow.